Imagine this, two tiny girls, identical twins, sitting frozen in a corner, so still they look like ghosts. No one can reach them. 10 nannies quit in 3 months. But one man, a quiet janitor with his own scars, does the impossible. Girls, I'm done. You hear me? I'm done. The nanny's voice echoed through the executive daycare center, sharp and frustrated. Thomas Fisher paused outside the glass doors, his maintenance card frozen mid-push. Through the transparent walls, he could see 2 small, identical girls pressed against the far corner, their backs rigid against the wall, faces blank like porcelain masks. I don't care if your mother is the CEO of this entire building, the nanny continued, her phone already in her hand. You've got 10 nannies to quit in 3 months. You just sit there like little ghosts. It's creepy. It's wrong. The twins didn't move. Didn't blink. They stared straight ahead as if the woman didn't exist. Thomas should have kept walking. He had 3 more floors to clean before his shift ended. But something about those 2 girls, the way they held themselves so still, so carefully, like they were trying to disappear, made his chest tighten with recognition. He knew that stillness. He'd lived with it for 6 months after the accident. Before we go further, have you ever met someone who understands your silence better than words? The nanny stormed past him, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, Miss Sawyer. I'm calling to inform you that I quit effective immediately. I can't work with children who won't even try. Her voice faded down the corridor. Thomas looked back at the twins. 7 years old maybe? Long curly brown hair, matching red dresses now rumpled from hours of sitting, and that terrible practiced emptiness in their eyes. The kind that comes from learning that silence is safer than speaking. He should walk away. He was just the janitor. This wasn't his problem. But those girls looked exactly like his son had looked back when Dylan had decided the world was too loud, too painful, too much to face. Thomas made a choice. He pushed his cart through the daycare doors. The twins' heads turned slightly, watching, wary. Hey, Thomas said softly, keeping his distance. He didn't approach them, just stood near the door, making himself small, unthreatening. I'm Thomas. I clean this building. I heard what she said to you. No response. But their eyes tracked him now. She was wrong, he continued, his voice low and steady. You're not creepy. You're not wrong. You're just scared. And that's okay. One twin's fingers twitched. The smallest movement, but Thomas caught it. He'd learned something crucial in the years since the accident. Sometimes the loudest communication happens in silence. I'm not going to make you talk. I'm not going to demand anything from you. I'm just going to be here for a minute and then I'm going to leave. Is that okay? Still no response, but their shoulders lowered just a fraction. Thomas slowly sat down on the floor across the room from them, his back against the opposite wall. He didn't stare at them, just sat there, existing in their space without threat. 5 minutes passed. The only sound was the quiet hum of the building's air conditioning. Then Thomas stood up, nodded once to the girls, and left. As the door closed behind him, he heard it, the softest exhale, like they'd been holding their breath and finally felt safe enough to release it. Thomas pushed his cart down the hallway, his mind already working. Tomorrow he would come back and he would bring something with him, something small, something smooth, something that said, "You're not alone." That night, in his small apartment across town, Thomas sat at his workbench in the corner of the living room. Wood shavings scattered across the surface as his carving knife shaped a small piece of maple wood. "Dad." Thomas looked up. His 7-year-old son, Dylan, stood in the doorway in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Thomas's hands moved in the fluid gestures of American Sign Language. "Can't sleep, buddy?" Dylan shook his head and padded over to the workbench. He peered at the half-carved object in Thomas's hands. "What are you making?" "A fish for 2 girls who need something to hold on to." Dylan tilted his head, curious. "Like my fish?" Thomas glanced at the small shelf above the workbench where Dylan's fish sat. The first thing Thomas had carved 4 years ago, when his son had stopped communicating after the accident. when his son had retreated so far inside himself that Thomas thought he'd never reach him again. Exactly like your fish, Thomas sighed. Dylan climbed onto the stool beside his father and watched him work. The scrape of knife against wood filled the comfortable silence between them. Are they scared? Dylan sighed after a moment. Yes, very scared, like I was. Thomas set down his knife and looked at his son, this brave, beautiful boy who'd lost his hearing, lost his mother, lost his whole world in one terrible moment, and somehow found his way back. Exactly like you were, Thomas sighed. But they're going to be okay, just like you. Dylan nodded seriously, then sighed, you should give them the fish tomorrow. It helped me. That's the plan. They sat together in the quiet apartment, father and son, carving hope into wood. The next evening, Thomas returned to the daycare center. The twins were in the exact same spot, backs against the wall, knees drawn up, faces carefully blank. A different nanny sat on the far side of the room, scrolling through her phone with the resigned expression of someone who'd already given up. Thomas knocked lightly on the door frame. I need to check the vent above the girls. Maintenance request. The nanny barely looked up. Whatever. Thomas wheeled his cart inside and set up his small stepladder near where the twins sat. He didn't look at them directly, just moved with deliberate, unhurried motions, checking the vent that didn't actually need checking. After a few minutes, he climbed down. From his pocket, he pulled out the wooden fish, smooth as silk, perfectly palm-sized, every edge rounded and soft. He'd spent 3 hours on it last night. 3 hours sanding until his fingers ached, until it felt like comfort in solid form. Thomas crouched down a few feet from the girls and placed the fish on the floor between them. Then he stood up, collected his tools, and left without a word. He didn't look back, but as the door closed, he heard the softest rustle of movement. One small hand reaching for something soft in a world that had been too sharp for too long. Day 2, Thomas brought a carved wooden bird. Day 3, a star. Day 4, a heart. Each evening he returned. Each evening he worked quietly near the twins, gave them a new carving, and left without demanding anything in return. The nannies rotated. Different faces, same disinterest. But the twins noticed Thomas. Their eyes followed him now, waiting, watching. By day 4, both girls clutched their collection of carvings, fingers tracing the smooth surfaces over and over. Thomas recognized the gesture. Dylan did the same thing when anxiety crept in. That repetitive motion, that need for something solid and safe. On day 5, Thomas made a choice. When he entered the daycare, the twins were watching for him. Actually watching, their heads turning as he approached. Thomas pulled out a wooden butterfly and knelt down. Instead of just placing it on the floor, he held it in his palm and then he signed, "For you." Both girls went completely still, their eyes locked on his moving hands with laser focus. Thomas signed again slowly and carefully. "My name is Thomas. I won't hurt you. You don't have to talk." One twin's mouth opened slightly, surprise flickering across her carefully blank face. He set the carved wooden butterfly down and moved to his usual spot against the opposite wall. But instead of working, he just sat. Just existed in their space, patient and present. 10 minutes of silence. Then Thomas stood, waved goodbye, and left. Day 6. Thomas brought a carved moon. This time when he sat down, he signed a story. His hands painted pictures in the air. A tale about a moon that watched over all the children in the world, especially the ones who were scared, especially the ones who'd forgotten how to speak. The moon never demands anything, Thomas signed. It just shines quietly in the dark, letting everyone know they're not alone. The twins watched every movement, mesmerized. When he finished, Thomas placed the moon on the floor and left. Day 7. When Thomas entered the daycare, his breath caught. The twins had arranged all 6 wooden objects, fish, bird, star, heart, butterfly, moon, in a perfect circle on the floor in front of them. A pattern, an offering, a response. Thomas's eyes stung. He sat down in his usual spot and pulled out the 7th carving, a wooden owl. This one is wise. It sees everything, but judges nothing. He placed it on the floor, and then one of the twins moved slowly. Trembling, she lifted her small hands. Her fingers formed careful, uncertain shapes. "Thank you?" Thomas kept his face calm even as emotions surged through his chest. He signed back, "You're welcome." "What's your name?" The girl's hands moved again, spelling out each letter. Skylar. Her sister watched. Then, gathering courage, she lifted her hands too. Nova. "Beautiful names," Thomas signed. "It's nice to meet you, Skylar and Nova." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Skylar signed. "Why do you talk with your hands?" "My son can't hear, so we talk like this." "Do you like talking this way?" Both girls nodded. Nova's hands moved. "People don't make us use our mouths when we talk like this." Understanding crashed over Thomas. Everyone wanted them to speak, to use their voices, to be normal. But sign language let them communicate without that pressure. It was a language of silence, and silence was where they felt safe. "You never have to use your mouth with me," Thomas signed. "Your hands say everything just fine." Skylar's fingers moved hesitantly. "Our therapist taught us to sign. After we stopped talking, she said maybe we could talk this way instead. That was a good therapist. This is a real language just as good as speaking." For the first time, something shifted in their faces. Not quite a smile, but close. Relief, recognition, hope. And here's the moment everything changes, they start to trust. After that 7th day, Thomas came every evening. The twins signed with him freely now, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. They told him stories through their hands, asked questions, shared small pieces of their world. 3 weeks in, Skylar signed something that made Thomas's chest ache. "Our daddy used to yell a lot. He got mad when we didn't act right, when we were too loud or too quiet or too anything. One day, he left and never came back." Nova added, "We decided together to stop talking. Words only made people angry." Thomas signed carefully, "Not all words make people angry, and silence is okay, too. You get to choose how you communicate. Always." "Why are you nice to us?" Skylar asked. Thomas thought about Dylan, about Claire, about the accident that had shattered their lives 4 years ago. A stupid argument about groceries while she was driving. Another car swerving into their lane. The terrible sound of impact. Claire gone instantly. Dylan losing his hearing when his head struck the window. He thought about the 6 months Dylan had stopped communicating afterward. The guilt that still whispered in Thomas's mind. "You distracted her. You could have stopped talking. You could have been driving instead." He thought about quitting his job as a nurse because he couldn't face that much life anymore. About becoming invisible as a janitor because invisibility felt safer than being seen. "Because I know what it's like to be scared. And I know what it's like when someone sees you anyway." One evening, Thomas brought Dylan with him. The twins' eyes went wide when they saw another child entering the daycare. Dylan waved shyly and signed, "Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm 7. My dad says you talk with your hands too." Skylar and Nova looked at each other, communicating in that mysterious twin language. Then Skylar signed back. "We're 7 too. Your dad is nice." "I know," Dylan signed. "He carved this for me." He pulled out his own wooden fish from his pocket. "When I'm scared, I hold it. It helps." Nova's eyes filled with tears. She held up her wooden fish, the first one Thomas had given them. "It helps us too." The 3 children sat together, comparing their wooden treasures, signing stories, laughing in complete silence. It was the most beautiful thing Thomas had seen since the accident. That's when Vanessa Sawyer walked in. She'd left a meeting early, frustrated with yet another nanny quitting. 12 months of this. 12 months since her daughters had spoken a single word. 12 months of failed therapies, defeated specialists, and silence so complete it felt like her children had disappeared. She pushed open the daycare door, expecting to find her daughters in their usual corner, shut down and unreachable. Instead, she found them sitting with the janitor and a young boy, all 4 of them signing to each other. The twins' faces lit up with something she hadn't seen in over a year. Joy. What? Vanessa's voice came out as a whisper. All four looked up. The twins immediately went still, their smiles fading, but they didn't retreat. They stayed beside Thomas, Nova's hand clutching his sleeve. The man stood quickly, respectfully. I'm sorry, Miss Sawyer. I'm Thomas. Maintenance. I was just. They're signing, Vanessa's voice cracked. They're actually communicating with you. How did you do this? I didn't do anything special, Thomas said quietly. I just sat with them. I didn't make them talk. My son is deaf, so we use sign language. The girls felt comfortable with it. Vanessa looked at her daughters. Really looked at them. They were holding small wooden objects. Their faces weren't blank anymore. They were present, engaged, looking at this janitor with something in their eyes that made Vanessa want to cry. Trust. How long? She asked, her voice shaking. About 5 weeks. I started leaving them wooden carvings. Eventually, they felt comfortable enough to sign with me. 5 weeks. Vanessa had walked past this daycare dozens of times. How had she not known? And they talk to you like this? Full conversations. They're brilliant, Thomas said simply. They just needed someone who would listen without demanding they speak. Skylar signed something to Nova. Nova nodded. Then Skylar slowly signed to her mother. He's nice. He doesn't make our mouths work. He gives us things to hold. She held up the wooden fish. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. She signed back, her fingers trembling. I'm so glad, sweetheart. Both girls looked shocked that their mother knew sign language. Vanessa had been learning for months, practicing alone, desperately hoping for a chance to use it. Mr. Fisher, Vanessa said, and there was something raw in her voice. Would you be willing to continue spending time with them? Please, I know this is unusual, but you've accomplished something in 5 weeks that no one else could manage in a year. I'll compensate you. No, Thomas said firmly, then softer. I mean, no payment. If it helps them, I'll do it, but not for money. Why? Vanessa asked. The man stood quickly, respectfully. I'm sorry, Miss Sawyer. I'm Thomas. Maintenance. I was just. They're signing, Vanessa's voice cracked. They're actually communicating with you. How did you do this? I didn't do anything special, Thomas said quietly. I just sat with them. I didn't make them talk. My son is deaf, so we use sign language. The girls felt comfortable with it. Vanessa looked at her daughters. Really looked at them. They were holding small wooden objects. Their faces weren't blank anymore. They were present, engaged, looking at this janitor with something in their eyes that made Vanessa want to cry. Trust. How long? She asked, her voice shaking. About 5 weeks. I started leaving them wooden carvings. Eventually, they felt comfortable enough to sign with me. 5 weeks. Vanessa had walked past this daycare dozens of times. How had she not known? And they talk to you like this? Full conversations. They're brilliant, Thomas said simply. They just needed someone who would listen without demanding they speak. Skylar signed something to Nova. Nova nodded. Then Skylar slowly signed to her mother. He's nice. He doesn't make our mouths work. He gives us things to hold. She held up the wooden fish. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. She signed back, her fingers trembling. I'm so glad, sweetheart. Both girls looked shocked that their mother knew sign language. Vanessa had been learning for months, practicing alone, desperately hoping for a chance to use it. Mr. Fisher, Vanessa said, and there was something raw in her voice. Would you be willing to continue spending time with them? Please, I know this is unusual, but you've accomplished something in 5 weeks that no one else could manage in a year. I'll compensate you. No, Thomas said firmly, then softer. I mean, no payment. If it helps them, I'll do it, but not for money. Why? Vanessa asked. Thomas thought about Dylan, about the people who treated his son differently after the accident, the teachers who spoke too slowly, the parents who pulled their children away, the strangers who stared like he was broken. Because everyone deserves someone who sees them. Not their diagnosis, not their trauma, just them. Vanessa's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing my daughters." It became routine. Every evening, Thomas spent time with the twins. Dylan joined them often. The three children formed their own world. A world where sign language was normal, where silence was respected, where wooden carvings were passed around like treasures. Vanessa started joining them, too. She'd sit quietly, learning to be still, learning to listen with her eyes instead of her ears, learning to stop trying to fix her daughters, and just be with them. One evening, after the children had fallen asleep on the daycare mats, all three curled together like puppies, Vanessa and Thomas sat by the window, talking in hushed voices. "I don't know how to thank you," Vanessa said. "You've given me my daughters back. They were never gone, just waiting. Still, you didn't have to do any of this." Thomas was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest. "After my wife died, people kept telling me to move on. Like grief was something I could just decide to stop feeling." He looked at the sleeping children. "But you can't move on from love. You just carry it differently." "What happened?" Vanessa asked gently. And Thomas told her about the accident, about the argument in the car, something stupid about forgetting groceries that ended with screeching tires and shattered glass. About Claire dying on impact, about Dylan surviving but losing his hearing. About the guilt that whispered in every quiet moment, "You distracted her. You could have stopped talking." About quitting his nursing job because he couldn't face that much life anymore, about becoming invisible because invisibility felt safer. "Helping Skylar and Nova," Thomas said softly. "It's not about moving on. It's about using what I learned from my own pain to ease someone else's. Otherwise, what was it all for?" Vanessa reached over and took his hand. "You're a good man, Thomas Fisher." He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "You're pretty remarkable yourself." The moment stretched between them, charged, uncertain, full of possibility. "I should go," Thomas said, but he didn't move. "You should," Vanessa agreed, but her hand tightened on his. And then somehow they were leaning toward each other, and Thomas's hand was cupping her face, and their lips met in a kiss that was gentle, tentative, and achingly hopeful. When they pulled apart, Vanessa whispered, "I haven't felt this in so long." "Neither have I," Thomas admitted. "We should take this slow," Vanessa said. "For the children." "Coffee?" Thomas suggested. "An actual date somewhere that isn't this daycare center." Vanessa laughed softly. "Coffee sounds perfect." They started with coffee dates, long conversations in small cafes where Thomas was just Thomas and Vanessa was just Vanessa. No titles, no roles, just two broken people learning to trust again. Their second date was lunch at a park. The children played nearby, running through grass, signing to each other, laughing. Thomas and Vanessa sat on a bench, shoulders touching, watching their kids be kids. "They're good for each other," Vanessa said. "They are." The third date, Thomas suggested an art painting class for children. He said Dylan loves it. It's visual, so he doesn't feel left out. I thought Skylar and Nova might enjoy it, too. Another way to express themselves. So one Saturday they all went together. 3 children and 2 parents who were maybe becoming something more. Dylan painted bold abstract shapes. Skylar created intricate geometric patterns. Nova painted a tower stretching from bottom to top of her canvas, precarious and beautiful. Thomas and Vanessa painted too, their easels side by side, their hands brushing with touches that didn't feel accidental. "You're terrible at painting," Vanessa teased. "I'm a carver, not a painter," Thomas protested. They laughed, and it felt so normal, so light, so different from the grief they'd both carried. Months passed. Coffee dates became dinner dates. Art classes became weekly traditions. Weekend outings to museums and parks and bookstores, where the children explored, and Thomas and Vanessa built something real. They were taking it slow, but they were also falling. One evening on Vanessa's balcony after the children were asleep, Thomas said quietly, Is it wrong to be happy again? Sometimes I feel guilty. It's not wrong, Vanessa interrupted gently. Claire would want you to be happy. Love after loss is possible. It doesn't diminish what came before. Thomas was quiet. My therapist said something similar, that we're capable of holding more than one truth at a time. Exactly. Vanessa took his hand. You loved Claire. You loved Dylan. And maybe you're starting to love us too. Thomas looked at her and nodded. Yeah, I think I am. I'm falling for you, too, Vanessa admitted. You and Dylan, you've become so important to us. They kissed on the balcony as city lights sparkled below, and it felt like a promise. 6 months after that first wooden fish, Thomas took everyone to the garden where the twins loved to feed birds. It was a cold morning. Everyone wore warm coats. Thomas had brought hot chocolate that the children passed around, breath making little clouds in the air. Nova was building a tower of small stones. Skylar arranged acorns in a spiral pattern. Dylan signed to Thomas about a bird he'd seen. And then quietly, Nova said, "The tower needs one more stone." Her voice was small, rusty from disuse, but it was there. Everyone froze. Nova looked up, surprised by her own voice. Skylar stared at her sister, eyes wide. Thomas signed gently. You spoke. That was beautiful. Nova's eyes filled with tears. She signed. I didn't mean to. It's okay, Vanessa said softly, kneeling beside her. You don't have to speak if you don't want to, but your voice is beautiful, sweetheart. We've missed it. Skylar touched her sister's hand. Then carefully she whispered, I miss talking too sometimes. Vanessa pulled both girls into her arms, tears streaming. No pressure. You talk when you're ready or don't talk at all. We love you exactly as you are. But something had shifted. The first words had come naturally. Not forced, not demanded, but offered freely when they finally felt safe enough. Dylan signed to his father, they found their voices. Thomas signed back, they always had them. They just needed time. The words came slowly after that. Not every day, not even every week, but gradually Skylar and Nova began mixing spoken words with sign language, choosing how to communicate based on comfort rather than expectation. They spoke more to Thomas and Dylan than anyone else at first. Thomas never made a big deal of it, just accepted whatever form their communication took. Vanessa watched her daughters bloom. They started singing sometimes, soft, tentative melodies that grew stronger. They asked questions, told stories, laughed out loud, and through it all, Thomas and Vanessa's relationship deepened. Family dinners, sleepovers, where all 3 children camped in blanket forts, conversations about the future, about what it might look like if they truly combined their lives. I want this to be real, Vanessa said one night on her couch, children asleep in the next room. I want you in my life, Thomas. Permanently. I want that too, Thomas admitted. But I worry about Dylan, about the adjustment. You're an incredible father, Vanessa said firmly. Dylan is thriving. He's happy. He has friends now. He has you. That's everything. Thomas pulled her close. Then let's do this. Let's really do this. Are you proposing? Vanessa teased. Not yet, Thomas said with a smile. But soon. 12 months after that first wooden fish, Thomas knew the time was right. He'd spent weeks carving a special set, a family of 5 figures connected at the hands, so smooth and perfect, they felt like love made tangible. He took everyone to the garden where the twins had first spoken again. It was early spring. Trees were blooming. Birds chirped. Morning sun cast everything in golden light. Thomas gathered everyone together. Then, smiling nervously, he knelt in the grass while Skylar, Nova, and Dylan stood nearby, each holding a hand-painted sign. Will you marry us? Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth. She looked at Thomas, at the children, at the signs they held with such hope. All of you? She asked, voice breaking. All of us, Thomas confirmed. We want to be a real family if you'll have us. Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. Yes, yes to all of you. Yes, yes, yes. The children rushed forward, wrapping arms around their parents in a tangle of laughter and love. Skylar spoke clearly. We're going to be a real family now. Nova added with a dad who listens, Dylan signed. And sisters who understand me. Thomas pulled out the wooden carving, the family of 5 figures, and placed it in Vanessa's hands. For you, for us, something to hold on to. Vanessa clutched it to her chest, feeling its smoothness, its warmth, its weight. It's perfect. You're all perfect. The wedding was held 6 months later in that same garden under a canopy of autumn flowers. Skylar and Nova wore matching flower crowns and carried signs in both English and ASL. Today we become a family. Dylan signed the vows for Thomas, his small hands careful and precise. Vanessa repeated them, voice steady and sure. The twins spoke their own vows, short and simple. We promised to be brave together. When they exchanged rings, all 3 children rushed forward, wrapping arms around their parents in a tangle of laughter and love. That evening, in their newly shared home, a house with a garden and a workshop for carving, the family gathered in the living room. Skylar and Nova sat at the piano in the corner, playing a duet they'd been practicing. Their voices joined the music, still hesitant sometimes, but growing stronger. They sang a song about finding home, about being safe, about love that covers you when you feel too small. Dylan sat beside them, feeling the piano's vibrations through his hands, his face bright with joy. Thomas and Vanessa stood by the window, arms around each other, watching their children, their family, fill the house with music and laughter. We did it, Vanessa whispered. We built something beautiful from broken pieces. We did, Thomas agreed. Together. On the mantel sat the wooden carving of 5 figures holding hands, smooth, perfect, unbreakable. Next to it, the very first wooden fish Thomas had carved. The one that started everything. Small objects that said, "You're not alone." Someone made this thinking of you. Someone carved away all the rough edges so it wouldn't hurt to hold. 2 broken families had become one whole one. Skylar and Nova found their voices again, speaking more each day, singing when the mood struck, slowly letting the world back in on their own terms. They learned that silence was okay, that sign language was just as valid as speech, that they could choose how to communicate. Dylan found sisters who learned to sign fluently, who included him in everything, who never treated him like he was different or less. He found a second mother who learned his language and loved him fiercely. Vanessa found a partner who understood that strength sometimes looks like vulnerability, that healing isn't linear, that love after loss is possible. She found peace knowing her daughters were truly okay. Not fixed or changed, but accepted and loved exactly as they were. And Thomas found forgiveness, not just from Vanessa or the children, but from himself. The guilt would always be there, a quiet companion. But it was no longer the only thing he carried. He carried love too. Hope, purpose, family. He'd learned what he tried to show the twins all those months ago. That everyone deserves to be seen. Not their diagnosis or trauma or problems. Just them, whole, worthy, deserving of gentleness, including himself. Sometimes healing doesn't come from words or therapy or grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from something small and smooth that fits in your palm and reminds you deserve softness. You deserve patience. You deserve something carved with care just for you. Sometimes it comes from someone who sees your silence not as something to fix, but as something to honor. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that healing is possible, that broken pieces can build something beautiful, that everyone deserves to be seen, please subscribe to Soul Lift Stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, what's one small gesture that changed your life? Your story matters.